G'day, folks. Adam Gibson here. Over the years, with Parents and Questions, many of you have come to know me as the face of things. But the truth of that is, as a co-founder behind the scenes, as nearly is always the case. And this particular co-founder rarely gets a mention. And that person is, of course, my wife, Fiona. And whilst I've been out the front of this, trying to slay dragons and building farms and speaking up for families and doing everything we've done through Parents and Questions and Uncoercible, Fiona's been at home running her own busy architecture practice. She's raising our 3 young daughters, keeping our property running, supporting me through the whole thing, and putting up with my, ups and downs and all the pressures that this journey has put us through. But more importantly than any of that, we've always had a very deep shared belief around parenting and family life, which is this. Is exploring the question of how we raise healthy, conscious kids in an increasingly unhealthy and disconnected world. Now, we get lots of things wrong ourselves, and we're by no means model parents and not trying to present as such. But between my own background in health and wellness and Fiona's deep personal interests and recent qualifications in nutrition, we spent a lot of time thinking and talking about this stuff and, importantly, really applying it practically in our own family. Because if you look out, take a 30,000-foot view, the reality is our kids in our Western world are not doing well. Our childhood obesity is exploding and chronic disease is at an all-time high. It has historically high levels in young kids as well as adults. Behavioral issues, focus issues, and emotional regulation problems, all these things are becoming increasingly normalised. And meantime, as parents, most of us are exhausted and stretched pretty thin to start with. And we're just really trying to survive the school morning rush and, making life happen and getting to kids to after school sport and so on while doing the best we can for them. And that's set against, a very uncertain time in the world generally. So that's what this conversation is about. How do we survive and not just survive, but really thrive in that space? So this is about what happens when we apply the same critical thinking to food and nutrition that many of us learnt to apply to big pharma and the medical system over the last few years. Because once you start questioning the narratives around processed food, about low-fat products, breakfast cereals, sugar and convenience culture and all the things you see in the supermarket, in that sort of breakfast aisle and the kids convenience aisle for food, a lot of things really stop making sense very quickly. But it also leaves a big gap or a very real question of what do you do instead, because we're all busy and convenience is important and necessary just to keep the wheels turning right now. So how do we feed the kids well in the real world? How do we make better choices without life becoming a full-time job just to keep the guilt at bay? So how do we create simple systems that actually work for busy families is really the thing we've been exploring in real time. And that's what this conversation's about, because she's, to her credit, come out with a bunch of solutions here, which she's done through trial and error. Rather than go through the process of interviewing my wife myself, because she would probably win the argument, I asked my good mate Jason Miles to step in, and he is a very outspoken and respected voice in the post-COVID world, and he's also a long-time health coach himself. So Jason stepped in, did a great job asking the questions, and Fiona and him have really talked about most of the things we're already thinking about as parents, and importantly, throwing up some solutions that are very easy to apply. Some big takeaways in here around nutrition, about kids' behavior, about focus, energy, emotional regulation, and the hidden traps that most of us fall into as families, particularly when life gets busy. But more than anything, I think this is just a reminder, this episode, that healthy kids don't happen by accident anymore. It's not just something to take for granted. It really needs to be a conscious decision. It takes awareness and it takes intention. And more, unfortunately, it takes us to be swimming against the tide of modern culture. We need to break the mold somewhat. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. This is Fiona Gibson with Jason Miles.
Hey, well, g'day everyone. It's been a while since I've actually sat and interviewed someone about the state of health, basically, and it's a real passion of mine as a wellness coach. Seeing people embrace holistic wellness, it's been something that I've really embraced since in my early 20s. Yet, with all that's happened in Australia in the last 5-6 years, something I don't spend enough time discussing. So tonight I'm going to change that. Before I introduce my guests, I just want to share, and we're going to talk about health and wellness with kids, but I just want to share some stats that I recall from 2019 when I was active in the wellness space. And my wife and my mate and his wife, we used to run juicing retreats in northern New South Wales in Yukon. So we'd get guests come through there, and we kind of knew the numbers at the time. But it was really damning to me when I saw just how bad our kids are going with health in this country. So today, 1 in 4 kids are overweight or obese, and that's projected to be at least 50% within the next 20 years. Now, that's a massive number, which is something that is not being addressed by any politician at all. In fact, if anything, the numbers are getting worse by the day. They're compounding, and the second and third order consequences are just flowing through right now, and we're seeing it. The other thing I want to make about how they do the measurements, they've actually changed the technical refinements and the reference chats or the points, rather, not chats, charts that they've used for obesity and how it's measured today. Because I think because we've become so sensitive to calling out, chronic health issues for fear of offending, they've modified that slightly. So I don't know whether it makes a big difference, but what I do know is that within roughly one generation, Australia went from childhood obesity being unusual to normalised, right? So, not here to offend. I'm here to defend proper health and wellness, which sadly is diminishing in this country. But people like my guest tonight is doing great work to flip it around. So, I do remember, and if you're my age as Gen Xer, 70s, most kids were lean. Like when I went to school, most kids were lean. The curve started bending upwards in late 80s, 90s, and the explosion really launched in the 2000s. And today, like I said, a quarter of all Australian kids are either overweight or onset of diabetes and every other ailment you can think of. And through it all, this lady tonight, my guest tonight, is refusing to accept the status quo. Through her platform, Rocket Fuel, she's helping parents turn the corner in food, like cutting through the confusion, the guilt, the overwhelm, even the shame, and showing families how to make real food choices that actually work in real life. So tonight, I'm talking with Fiona Gibson about what it looks like to raise kids. She's got her own 3 girls in this environment without surrendering to the ultra processed tide, and how parents can start using food as rocket fuel for their children's health and not damage control as it is now for the next disease report card that comes through. So I'm going to invite her in now, and you are there. Beautiful. The
Hi,
technology works.
Adrian.
Fiona, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Happy to do this. It's like I said to the people before, it's just a real privilege to talk about health and wellness. Now, I know you from one of the most amazing projects that I was privileged to witness, and that is Parents with Questions. And that's incredibly important in an age where many people feel hesitant to ask difficult questions, and they're encouraged to simply trust the institutional authorities, basically. So, just for the people watching this tonight, just Fiona, tell me who is Fiona Gibson?
Yeah, so I'm a wife, a mother, and a business owner. My husband Adam is one of the key people involved in Parents with Questions, encouraging parents to question, you know, trust their own intuition, trust their own
Mm.
gut when it comes to people outside of your family telling you what you should be doing with your family. And so yeah, have been walking alongside Adam with the Parents with Questions campaign over the last number of years. Also, I've got 3 girls of our own who are an endless source of joy and entertainment.
I had the privilege of
And
meeting them. They're beautiful girls.
yeah, they are. They're gorgeous, gorgeous girls, and have also run my own architecture practice
Mm.
over the last 20 odd years as well. And so all of that kind of, and we've had our own hobby farm and all sorts. So I'm not one to sit around idly for too long. There's always something to do and to juggle. So yeah, I guess to sum me up, I'm a busy mum.
You are, and I'm going to pull you up. I don't think you walk beside Adam. There were days where you were walking about 3 steps in front of him with that Parents with Questions initiative. So tell me a little bit about, what was the specific moment for you, Fiona, with your kids that made you think this current system isn't working?
Yeah. So I guess I've always been a health nut. I've always believed that, food is medicine and you are what you eat. And over the years, I've tried all sorts of different, been vegetarian, been vegan, done raw food, done paleo. This is all predominantly before kids. I guess just out of an innate desire to kind of see what works for my body and how I would feel, and to really optimize my own health. And so clearly, when my kids came along, you'd call me a crunchy mum of, really wanting to, be so conscious of what I'm putting into their bodies and what they're eating and getting a balanced diet. And I guess the turning point for me was actually we homeschool our kids for a few years post COVID, and I was running my business. So again, that was busy, just juggling the homeschooling and my business. But
Yeah.
I could cook them up a good breakfast every morning and make sure they were getting good source of protein and some healthy fats and all of that. And then in the last sort of couple of years, kids have gone back to school, and I think that's when it really hit me, was that trying to rush them out of the house in the mornings, have them off to school on time, jobs done, lunchboxes packed, trying to get them to eat something nutritious. And that for me was probably like the most stressful hour of my day was
Wow.
was
Yeah.
that. And
Yes,
it was
there's a
almost
lot of
like,
parents that probably agree with you on that one.
yeah, and it was just like, trying to get all that out of the house and then just turn up to work and to get what I needed to do done,
Yeah.
in that time, often without kind of feeding myself or whatever. And I was like, "There's gotta be a better way." And so, I was sort of aware that there's sort of healthy convenience foods in the shops, and, started to kinda look at some of those. But, like, I'm a bit of a chronic label reader,
Good
and
work. Good
I've
work. Power to you, lady. Power to you.
yeah, and so something that, at first glance looks healthy, and then you flip it over and go, "Actually, I'm actually not happy to feed my kids that." And so that was really the crunch point where it's like, "There's gotta be an easier way." Like, this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
surely I'm not the only one struggling with this, and there's gotta be an easier way. So,
Well,
that kind of fueled my interest in kind of really trying to knuckle down and go, right, how are we gonna do this, where I can feel stress free, guilt free, my kids are well fueled for the day, and my kids are empowered with making their own healthy options in their life.
it's
So
beautiful. Well said. And I think things like the Yuki, I think it's Yuki
that's right.
app. There's a bunch of apps out there where I had a friend of mine up from Torquay last weekend, and she's and you mentioned health nut. I just want to come back to that in a sec.
Mm,
But she is a massive health and wellness nut. She's a
mm.
guru. And she said, "Oh, have you seen this app?" That and so she's walking around my kitchen, my pantry with this app, and fortunately, they all came up nice and green for me.
Good on you.
And mind you, I'm married to a pretty good cook as well, and she
Yeah.
only has beautiful ingredients. Just on the health nut part though, so you got 3 girls, they're pretty young, and like I
Mm,
said, I've been blessed to meet them. But so what was the breaking point for you where you realised modern kids' food was becoming a problem? And we know it is because
mm.
the data's telling us that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's right. And, I guess the other side of that was sending the kids back to school, and my girls coming home saying, "Oh, so and so has, this in their lunchbox and that in the lunchbox, and can you buy me this for my lunchbox?" And kind of realizing that I've been living in a bit of a bubble myself of, assuming that everyone else is sort of on board with the same kind of health baselines for their children, and I realize that's not the case. And a lot of people, I think, it's not that parents don't care about their children's health, like, it's quite the opposite. It's just that society is just not set up to support busy parents and their health outcomes for their children. That I think that sort of sums it all up, is that, it's the society's working against us. The marketing, the amount of money that goes into children's food marketing is phenomenal.
Yeah, I wanna talk about
Um,
that a bit later on too.
yeah, and we're just up, parents are up against it. There's no two ways about it.
Do you think, so just thinking out loud here for a sec, do you think or so your girls have generally eaten really clean and well
Mm,
yeah, so just looking at other and not judging other people's kids here because this is not about judgment, it's just about the reality of the world we live in, right? And you
mm,
said it so well because we've now been framed to live in this high speed, high action, 2 parents working, get in, get out, work long hours. And that's not the world that a lot of people wanna live in, but
mm.
in this reality of the world we do. So do you notice other kids' behaviors, their mood, all that stuff, changing around you? Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And and I've got a few friends who are teachers as well, and they're
Wow.
the first people that will tell you they know exactly what the kids have had for breakfast, or not exactly, but they've got a really good idea of which students have had what for breakfast, and
Yeah.
what they've, without even looking inside their lunch boxes, what they're eating for lunch, based on their behaviour for the next 2 hours in the classroom.
Wow.
And yeah, and again with my kids as well, like they'll I'm not an absolute Puritan. I'm not kind of a helicopter. You cannot eat this and this and this. But it's more for me. It's more about getting on balance, having a really good diet, and making sure all your nutritional needs are met. But there's times where kids will go to a party, a friend's party, or a sleepover or whatever, and yeah, absolutely. It's like they will crash after, overdoing the sugar or the, additives or whatever. And it's very, very visible to me, I think, because the kids have largely not had that in their diet
Yeah.
growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to know what it does to their system long term. And we've all got family members that with kids, nephews, nieces, great nephews, nieces, whatever. And you do see it. I personally am involved in this, and I do see it. Just how diet has really impacted their lives. When it's just sugar and white bread, that highly processed stuff. But I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you here. So you mentioned you've tried many food philosophies. You've tried, like, I'm plant based, and
Mm,
no shame about that. I don't judge anyone for eating, because I was
mm,
a Queensland boy eating meat all my life
yeah.
till about 10 years ago. But vegetarian, you've done raw as well, paleo. What did you ultimately learn from all those, what I'd say are good philosophies? And did you experiment with some of them with your kids, or was it pretty much kids standard sort
Yeah.
of?
Yeah, no, I think, I'd sort of done my vegetarian, vegan, and raw before having kids,
Okay.
largely. And paleo we did a bit with the kids as well. But where I'm at the moment in my philosophy around food is, what I would call a qualitarian.
Okay.
So
No,
it's
I've
all
heard
for
of
me,
that.
it's about the quality of
Yeah.
the food. So
Yeah.
it's not like I do eat meat, but I will only eat what I know, where I know it's being grown properly and, grass fed and, humanely treated and, by a regenerative, or, and so it's just being picky about the foods that I do eat, and I eat a broad range of things, and so does the family. So
Okay,
yeah.
and that makes sense to me. You do it as well. I guess the question might be, some people will say inflation, cost of living pressures.
Mm.
Have you managed to sort of adapt, and do you sort of push some discretionary costs out the door so you can put better stuff on the table?
I guess so, because it is one of the main values that my husband and I both hold,
Mm,
is the quality of food. But I totally get it. Like, cost of living is going up, and but what was interesting, I put together this little a course for other parents, just to help, 3 steps to kind of just reset breakfast and lunch, and just really easy. And what was really important to me was to make, anyone can kind of reframe their whole diet, if you've got endless funds. But like the
yeah.
reality is, who's got that much money to throw around? So it was really important that the steps that I am suggesting to put in place were the same cost or cheaper. And so it just, for me, it's just about choosing, different items. And often, if you're buying packaged food for your kids, there are other more natural whole options that
Mm.
will not cost you any more, or will in fact be cheaper.
Yeah, and using those apps are great. I mean, I love them. I do
Mm,
use them a fair bit when I shop. I do the shopping, believe it or not, and I
mm,
make sure that when I get the ingredient, so we buy, and we're very conscious about the way we buy. We use honest to goodness, not everything from them. We don't use Woolworths or Coles that often, but when we have to, we will. But by and large, it is the best we can get with the money we have at the time.
mm,
And fortunately, if you grow a bit of your stuff, you know where it's coming from. So
mm,
that's a real positive for me as well.
mm.
You may have answered this, but I just want to, do you think parents, again, not wanting to create shame or guilty, but do you think parents are overwhelmed? Not because they don't care, because they do. Obviously, we love our kids, right? And this is very topical at the moment with this intergenerational narrative that Labor's put out. But do you think the system itself makes healthy living so difficult?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think, you're walking into a shopping centre, and or a grocery store, and you do have your fruit and veg there, but pretty much reliably the next aisle that you hit is the chips and the lollies and the, and all of that. And I think, yeah, that just I think if you're if you are health conscious and wanting to make improved health choices for your children,
Yeah.
and you're shopping in a grocery store, you are going to pay more money than something that, I guess the big brands that are marketing to kids, they have massive budgets for marketing, and unfortunately, yeah, the money goes into making more sales, not into better quality of ingredients.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and that's just the reality. So, um, like I guess fundamentally as well, I said I'm a qualitarian, but I guess the more whole and the more untouched the food as well is. So if you are eating food that isn't processed, you're most of the way there. So
Yeah.
reaching for a piece of fresh fruit rather than a roll up. Having some freshly popped popcorn rather than a packet of chips. These are just very small and cost effective changes that you can make tomorrow,
Yeah.
just to get that bit more nutrition into your kids' diet.
I had a chat with a local where I live up here in the Mary Valley in southeast Queensland, and sorry, she said to me, "Oh, look, I just can't afford to buy organic food." And I said, "Well, don't buy whatever you can afford." And she said, "But it's sprayed." And I'm going, "Okay, well, when you get home, get a tub, get 3 cups of
Mm,
baking soda, like, bicarb, and just literally put it all in there, let it sit for a bit, give it a wash, clean it. It's gonna absolutely kill 99% of the stuff sitting on it."
mm,
So there are practical, and bicarb's not dear, so there's things you can do to actually remedy it and keep things, like, as healthy as you possibly can.
that's
There was a documentary, and I don't know whether Pete Evans put it out. I can't remember, but it was something about overfed and undernourished. It's a real For
right.
me, that's a real paradox, right? That's
Mm,
playing out for kids, and not just kids actually, for most people, because we tend to be alive longer but living less, in my opinion.
mm.
And I'm seeing a lot of this at the moment. So, if I want to pair it back to kids again, so do you think that there is some sort of correlation between the emotional regulation and the concentration that ties back to this food?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not sure if it's the same documentary that you're talking about, but there is one that Pete Evans was involved in, and they were looking at even children um, on the autism spectrum and feeding them a high fat diet, so healthy fats, high fat diet, and it was quite phenomenal. The
That was
the
the little girl
results.
that was she couldn't speak, and I can't.
Yeah, yeah, and it's quite a few years old, so I don't have a really crisp memory of it, but and
Remember.
but yes, definitely, I think feeding the brain is such a
Mhm.
big thing for growing children that is just not really spoken about. And I think coming out of the 90s where all the low fat food was all the rage, and if you don't eat fat then you'll lose weight and you'll be skinny and everything, and that's the biggest fallacy around, one of the biggest fallacies around.
I
Um,
agree.
it's healthy fats that actually fuel the brain.
Yeah.
And so for children to be able to concentrate in class or to concentrate at sport or, um, just for keeping them fuller for longer. So they're not kind of like eating breakfast and then like craving something sugary like half an hour later. It's those healthy fats are so key to have for breakfast, in the lunchbox, just to help sustain energy throughout the day. And that, you know, so that's where we're talking about real nourishment, like rather than overfeeding. I think I'm not sure what the stats are, but I think, and the rates of obesity would probably lend themselves to this. But I'd say a lot of kids are eating more calories than they need, but
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
said, they're just not getting the nourishment that they need in those calories. So highly processed carbohydrates, and even and sugar and um, yeah, they're just um, not they're not beneficial for young
No.
kids.
No,
Yeah,
they're filling up on garbage, basically, and we
yeah.
know that. And I studied over 2,000 hours of cancer, and I kind of understood the ketogenic diet the way, the ketones work in the body and how the liver, because like you say, your brain needs these, right? And it's got
Mhm.
when you're fasting and you're doing ketogenic, especially when you're vegan, like my wife went
Yeah.
through cancer, and so there's no sugar. Essentially, you're trying to suppress the sugar, the glutamine, and the natural sugars
Mm,
that come through, and then your liver's got to process this stuff, and that's if you don't have fats to your brain, you're dead essentially.
mm.
Cholesterol's got to run through. I want to go back to a point you made about you said something about 3 steps before. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've kind of developed, and it's interesting because after I had my bit of a meltdown around like surely there's got to be an easier way to get the kids out to school and fed in the mornings, and so I'm pretty systems focused is the way my brain works, and I thought there's surely got to be a better way. So I was a bit sort of strategic about, what could we do that, little shifts that would make a big difference. Because I also know, like I anything that's going to take too much time, too much money, too much energy is just not going to stick. So I was sort of honing in on what are the like three really simple things that I can do that will have the biggest impact in our family. So they were things that I started to test and try in our family, and then in talking to friends and other extended family.
Mm.
Um, and they were like, "Oh, that sounds fantastic, and can you tell me all about it and everything?" And then it kind of just even other mums at school, and my kids were sort of talking to their friends, and then the mums would be like, "Oh, Fiona, so what's this thing that that your daughter was talking about?"
Oh,
And
wow.
so it just kind of
Fantastic.
grew out a bit, and I've ended up doing a little 3-step program. It's like a little mini course, so like three
Yeah.
10-minute videos with some resources that I've used at home with my kids that really work. And I just thought, like, I'm so passionate about this, and I just really see there's such a need for it. Like the rates that you were talking about, the obesity rates and the projections are just
Yeah.
like that. That just upsets me. Like it really does. And like these poor kids, it's not their fault. Like they're not
Yeah.
like it's not their fault. And so I just am really passionate about making some big, big shifts in this space. And so yeah, I created this little mini course, and it's got some resources in there that just make it super simple to implement. Make a few key little small shifts in your life that can make a big difference. So yeah,
Is
so
there a
that's
cost?
available for free.
Is there a cost to that, Fiona, or you
Oh
just
no, absolutely free. I've just
give
I've
it
just
away?
done it and sharing the love. Yeah.
Oh, good for you, mate. And so that's on your webpage? Give it a plug while you're here, by the
Yeah,
way. I
that's
don't.
right. So Rocket Fuel, so ROCKIT dash fuel, FUEL.com. That's the little website that I've set up. And if you go to that website and go to the menu, there's a little drop down, and you can get to the 3-step reset. So that's that little 3-step mini course that you can sign up for free, and that'll get delivered to you in your inbox, or you can just log in and do the 3 small videos and get the resources, all done in like half an hour. And on the website as well, I've got a product that I have developed, and same sort of thing. It's just something that I worked on and tested out on my kids. There were plenty of failures before we kind of, got to something. It had to be something that was really quick and easy and nutritious, and that my kids loved. And this was just a solution for me for those busy mornings and getting out the door. And so this is this product that I've developed called Rocket Fuel,
Mhm.
and
I like the
it's
name,
a
by the way, Rock It. Yeah. That's
yeah,
good.
my kids just started. One of the girls started calling it that, and it's just kind of stuck. So it's a balanced. It's like a chocolate milkshake powder. So it's a powder that you mix with milk, and so if you're dairy intolerant, you can use whatever alternate milk that you like.
Yeah.
Or if you're fine with dairy, then use your cow's milk, and mix it, blend it up, and it provides a really balanced proportion of fats and protein and fiber and sugars. It's really palatable, but it won't create those sort of sugar spikes that you'd get from drinking any other kind of
Yeah.
chocolate milk or other, breakfast drink. And because of the high natural healthy fat content, keeps your kids fuller for longer. So
Yeah, can I
yeah.
just share a story with you? My mum used to be, rest her soul, she used to drink these ice break things. I've never
Mm.
had one in my life, I must say, but I did drink milkshakes,
Mm.
and she would crash within 10
Mm.
minutes. She'd come home with a 600 ml or whatever they are, the caramel bottle, throw it down, like, literally, this is a little Scottish woman, and
Yeah.
she'd be literally, she would peak, and then she would crash,
Mm.
totally
Mm.
crash. So tell me about the ingredients in this stuff, though. Can you and does it fill you? Like, could an adult
Mm.
take it?
Absolutely. Like it's good for everyone, but I guess because I'm so passionate about the kids, really transforming kids' health, because healthy kids end up as healthy adults.
Yeah, nice, well said.
Well, at least I hope so. Yeah, I've kind of really refined it for children, and because that was the solution that I was trying to solve in our household, was something I could feed the kids guilt free for me.
Yeah.
Ready in 30 seconds. They can fix it themselves. breakfast is sorted. I don't have to convince them to eat it. Like they'll happily just knock it back and they're away. So it's made with organic cacao powder. So the cacao is high in magnesium. It's got a number of mood boosting compounds for keeping your mood really happy and healthy. It's got coconut milk powder, which provides the healthy fats to keep you fuller for longer and help fuel the brain for school. I've used collagen powder in it, so it is grass-fed beef collagen powder, and I picked that. Again, it was sort of more of a personal preference for me because I struggle with pea protein powder and whey protein powder from a digestion point of view. So collagen, for me, I found it much easier to digest, and just a finer texture as well. So I know, my kids have tried other bits and pieces, and some of them can be a bit grainy. So that's why I chose the collagen powder to make it really palatable and be sweet enough. I've used date powder, so it's literally just dates that are sort of dehydrated made into a powder, and so that provides some good fiber. And dates also have a whole host of minerals and good things in them. And then also some monk fruit sweetener as well, which is a 0-calorie, super high in antioxidants and super sweet. So there's only a tiny bit of monk fruit in there to provide that extra boost because I needed to be palatable for the kids. So giving
Yeah.
them some bitter, healthy thing is like it's actually not solving a problem in our house if my kids are just like, that's disgusting, I'm not going to have it. So, and also some carob powder in there too, again, to provide a bit of sweetness, some more minerals, and really easy on digestion.
Does the raw cacao give it a bit of a balance though, like a bit of a tartar sort of
Yeah, so the
principle?
cacao's got some natural bitterness in it, and so that's why I've added some carob powder, which balances out to give
Yeah.
it a bit more sweetness and smoothness in the flavor profile. So,
Okay.
yeah, and I guess I played around and I've had plenty of failures. Just ask my kids. It's like, oh, this is disgusting. And all right, start again. Let's what is working here, what's not. But where I've ended, I'm really happy with. Looking at the macros, so your protein versus fats versus carbohydrate balance, as well as that palatability and the flavor.
Right.
And yeah, and so yeah, I started making that. I've been refining it for ages, but then yeah, my kids' friends were like, "Oh, what is that?" They come for a sleepover, and "What is that? Oh, can I have some? Oh, can you give my mum the recipe? Can you?" And so I just ended up making it in batches, big bulk batches, and then kind of like, "Does anyone else want some?" And started to kind of sell it that way, and then it's just yeah, turned into a more of a thing, and so that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
I've never wished for someone else to be my mum because I love my mum, God bless her, but you'd have been a good one because all I got we didn't, we weren't exactly wealthy, so
Mm.
and the, advertising that was pitched at us was, that whole just like a chocolate milkshake, only
Mm.
crunchy,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
kids love that cocoa, but the addictive nature of it, and, so you didn't really get the balance of minerals, but you had more nutrient dense food back there, I will say that, and that's something that I've done a lot of research into.
Yeah.
So food was better. Just going back to the kids with this, is it meal replacement? Is it a meal?
Yeah, so like my girls won't eat it 5 days a week for breakfast, but it's kind of like a couple mornings a week with milk. With full cream milk, it'll keep them full till morning tea, if not lunchtime.
Wow.
With non-dairy milk, which has a lower fat content, I'll add a tablespoon of coconut cream or something like that to it, just to boost the kind of natural fats and keep that satiety. So
Yeah. We know what
keep
you
you fuller for longer.
mean. Yeah, you're right.
And so yeah, so it is. It's all you need in the morning for the kids to kind of get up and off to a great start. And then I'll stir it through porridge for breakfast if it's a cold morning. And so then again, they're getting protein and they're getting fats in with their grains. And the other thing they often will do is come home from school, have a serve of rocket fuel and then off to sports training, and it,
Oh,
it
wow.
gives them really good kind of just and straight energy, and just helps them focus, helps them perform when it comes to training for
And
sport and
metabolism and all the rest, gut health that goes with that
all of
as
that. Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Mm,
I'm gonna have to get some for myself because I'm a bit of a lover of, I must say, of the powder, but the good stuff. But I
mm,
like to put a banana in occasionally and
Yeah.
smoothies and whatever else. So it sounds like something I need to have a look at myself.
Mm.
We'll keep it rolling. So we often hear about or the we think we know about the current status of something, right? And we just assume that to be normal. And right now, I don't want to bring politics into it, but there's not an Australian I don't know who is not in opposition to what happened with the budget release the other night, right? So I'll leave it there. A lot of pain, and a lot of economists are now talking about it. But do you ever think parents in this and we talked about this at the beginning, but do you ever think parents in their busy lives rarely take this step back? And you mentioned helicopter before, you're not a helicopter parent, but do we ever take this 30,000 feet view and see what the scenario might look like if we just put a little bit more attention into it now and to see what kids look like when they're properly fueled rather than depleted with the current, sad, what do they call it? This sad Australian diet, the sad diet.
That's actually a really good question, Jason. And I think I, I can't speak for everyone, but I know for myself, go through phases where, you're so busy, it's just one thing after the other. You're kind of getting through life and you're ticking all the boxes. And I know from personal experience, like I'll kind of just get in my zone and do my thing, and then I'll crash out and I'll
Right.
be like, oh, hang on, what happened? And then, uses those sort of crisis points to kind of backtrack and go, actually, okay, so maybe I wasn't fueling myself as well as I could, or maybe I wasn't getting enough sleep, or maybe I wasn't. And so for me, it takes to those crisis points to really like take that big picture view and have a look at that. But I would suggest that probably a lot of parents don't, and like not even parents, but adults probably don't have a great sense of how good they could feel
Mm,
because we're so used to kind of just sitting in the lane that we're in and tolerating, as adults, so I'm a bit tired. I'll grab a coffee, grab another coffee.
yeah.
Now I'm all wired and it's bedtime. Okay, I'll have a wine, have another wine, and we're relying on things outside of ourselves to deal with what we're feeling. And I think kids are the same. They not getting a good nutritional balance. Like they will crave sugary food to give them a bit of a sugar boost so that they feel a bit better and have a bit more energy, which is followed by then a sugar crash, and then they're reaching for more sugary foods. And this is where these things become addictive because the energy is all over the shop, and they're looking
Mm,
for things like. Name an adult who doesn't have the same, go through the same thing of like you're looking for something to kind of help you feel a bit better and to kind of get you through the next bit. And kids are the same, and so that's where they're kind of reaching for lollies and Coke and things like that to get them to feel better, and it just ends up being a downward spiral.
the spiral, yeah. And I
Yeah.
love what you said there before when you said we often look outside ourselves. And like I'm a health coach, wellness coach, and I was before 2020, and I sort of stay back. I get back there again now, but I'm also very conscious of everything that we seem to rely on in this world now is it hasn't been stripped from us. We've let that happen, but it feels like it's always the external that is
Mm,
guiding us and
mm,
not allowing ourselves to go within and go, well, what's actually right for me? What would my kids look
mm,
like in the best, healthiest version of themselves, right?
mm,
Because I know as when I was 117 kilos once when I was
mm,
16 or 17, my tummy, my steering wheel used to of my Tirana used to rub on my belly. I was a fatty
mm,
because I had my hand in the hot box all the time, eating the veal
mm,
and cheese, cabana, all this bad stuff, and I nearly died when I was 16 from a bad strain of salmonella. But what I committed to when I was about 22 was when I love my sport, and when I was 30, so when I was 22, I wanted to make sure I can still do the sport at 30, and
yeah,
when I'm 30, I want to make sure I can still do what I'm doing at 30, at 40, 40. So pay it forward, I guess.
yeah.
And that was probably the purpose of my question. Do you think we take enough time out to look at our kids and say, "Gosh, they're 10 now, they're 9 now, they're 8 now. What are they going to look like in 16, and what
Mm.
role am I playing in that?"
Yeah, I think, and I probably, I would say, you know, society, culture is so busy that we're not stopping to do that and to ask those questions. And I
Yeah.
guess the other part of it too, which is why I'm so passionate, particularly about kids, is that they're such formative years of their lives in terms of physical development, emotional development, mental development, like that the kind of primary school through teen ages, and of course younger, but that's kind of where I really feel society isn't doing our kids justice. Like it's just not when it comes to like food and nutrition and how giving them the best start in life. And yeah, the habits that they create in those years are habits that will continue for the rest of their lives. And that's part of my little 3-step program is actually empowering kids to start making those choices for themselves. So, and that was my other little hack about, making the mornings easier, was actually handing those, the lunchbox packing over to my kids. So when they're really little, I don't expect them to kind of cook up a storm off their own back, but I've having looked at this and having tried it firsthand, is even the simple act of, like, making a child a sandwich and chopping it up, having them physically put it in the lunchbox,
Mm,
they are more likely to eat it than if they have not touched it beforehand. So
mm,
even just tiny little simple steps to start handing over that, giving them options, that choices. So saying, like, okay, would you like an apple or a banana? Like, they're taking ownership over their choices. They're more likely to eat them, because that was my other pet hate, was, going to all this trouble trying to pack a really healthy lunchbox and then have it come home uneaten and waste of food. And I was just, oh, this is no good. And so that's when I started to kind of get my children to pack their own lunchboxes, with some parameters. And so that's, again, like, talk back to my little three-step program. But I've got a lunchbox challenge that my kids still use, or the younger two do. My older one's a teenager now, so she's not as, but the kind of habits are ingrained. But my younger two will still print out the lunchbox challenge, and they've got, they can tick off, that yes, they've got a piece of fruit, yes, they've got some veggies in their lunchbox, yes, they've got some healthy fats, yes, they've got some protein, and they just tick 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 and pack it all in. And they'll eat it because they've put the time and the energy and the effort in choosing it, and then they'll eat it. So it's one of the biggest turning points for me, was having the kids kind of take that ownership for themselves. And it gives them that sort of sovereignty over their health outcomes. Like, did you feel better today for eating that as opposed to that? And it's actually getting them to tune into, like, what actually works for them as well. And so, what a gift to give your kids, where, you
totally.
know, they're from a young age, they're learning what works for them. So,
And I love the word you bring, sovereignty, into that, because that's, there's a lot of talk around being a sovereign nation at the moment with,
mm,
the way Australia is. But the sovereignty part of it, whether it's financial, spiritual, food, health, obviously, I think that's a key part. And by
mm,
giving kids the building blocks of health, proper health at the
mm,
beginning, that's just going to, and I'm just not talking about 10 years from now, I'm talking about 20, 30 years from now, because
yeah,
we've got a sick care system that is crumbling around us,
yeah,
and we don't need a bunch of, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds being a further burden on an already burgeoning Medicare
mm,
system and NDIS and everything that,
that's right,
that pay it forward thing that happens back there.
that's right.
Um, and that's why I really love what you said there. I think that's going to connect with a lot of people, Fiona, in my opinion. And
Mm,
if you just joined us, go back to the beginning. But I'm chatting with Fiona Gibson, who is a mum, self-professed health nut, and someone that was a little bit short on time and loves the girls, three girls, and her and her husband Adam, and really was looking for something that was of high quality nutrition for her kids. And so she came up with Rocket Fuel, a website as well, which I'll link it to, by the way, and you can do it.
yes,
Fiona's done a free three-step, not a course, I guess, but education program, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah,
Yeah, in and around that.
yeah,
I just want to ask you: when you speak with, do you speak with mums often?
yeah, yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Okay, all right. I didn't want to assume, but
yeah,
because we're about 2,000 k's apart.
that's
um,
right.
But when you see when you talk to parents and they, or A, I guess, I'll assume nothing. Do they look at the label? And if they do and they see the word, like natural or flavors, coloring, whatever, no added sugar, date, syrup, rice, malt, all that stuff, do you talk to that stuff about them? And do parents raise that as a concern?
I guess, I haven't had a lot of other parents raise it to me, because I think a lot of people just do take packages at face value. They're kind of
Right.
like, it might say natural on it or no preservatives on it, and that's better than a product that,
Mm.
has preservatives and doesn't have anything natural in. But, I think, it's hmm. I think a lot of people just take things at face value and not actually looking into what the ingredients actually are. And, things like, just because, you put something like vegetable oils and you go, oh, it must be good because it's vegetable oil. And it's like, well, if that vegetable oil has been so highly processed that it has
Yeah.
no like been through chemical processes, heat processes, whatever, it no longer resembles anything like the original vegetable, and actually has no nutritional value in it. It's kind of, so it's I think there's a little bit of education just around understanding, some of the fundamentals of, what is found in a lot of these processed foods. Um, So, that's one road you can take, is kind of actually really starting to understand your labels and, really kind of understanding what's going into the food. Because even like the no sugar, no sugar Coke and no sugar, this and that. And it's like, well, surely that's got to be healthy then. It's got no sugar, and it's like, the aspartame, which is the sugar replacement. Some studies have linked that to cancer, and like it's known as a carcinogenic substance in some
Correct.
countries,
Correct.
but they still put it in the soft drinks in Australia. So one option is kind of delving into all of that and looking at all the numbers and what they mean and everything. Another simpler option might be, okay, so this week we're not going to buy a packet of this. Instead, I'm going to just whip up my own batch of bliss balls and give that to the kids instead.
Yeah.
And so
That's
I've got, like, or just kind of, give them a piece of fruit rather than a roll up, or,
yeah.
give them a, natural yogurt with some fresh berries and some honey in it, rather than a packaged one that may or may not have extra sugar and all the things in it. So I guess just little tiny shifts towards, more wholeness in the food, less processing, is just a really excellent start. So, and again, like if someone had said, all right, you've got to clear your whole pantry out, you've got to start from scratch. This is what you've got to eat and whatever. Be like, too hard, and the kids are not on board, and it's just creating more stress for me and everything. So I'm just more of the philosophy of just pick one thing at a time. Like, okay, I'm going to stop buying that and I'm going to replace it with this instead. See how you go for a week. See if you notice any difference. Okay, that was good. That did work. Didn't work. Let's look at this week, and we'll replace that with that, and swap that out for that, and just see what happens. And it's, again, it's no shock for the children. It's like
Yeah.
they get to adjust and kind of adapt, and just step by step, and before you know it, and you can just keep refining as you go, and every step in that direction is a good step. So
I love that. And as you're saying that, I'm hearing those words come from your mouth, and you're treating your kids like test labs in a beautiful environment where you got nutritious food. But on the other side, and I actually couldn't believe when I read this study, not read this study, when I listened to this whistleblower statement, that so these creators of these manufactured processed foods, they literally come up with chemicals that create an addiction, a dopamine
mm,
hit basically.
mm,
And they then have that in the food. So then you've got the children's palate compromised because they're conditioned to this hyper palatable processed
mm,
food. Like, but what
mm,
you're doing is the opposite. You're giving them natural stuff, and that weans them off this garbage, I guess.
yeah.
That we tend to put in. I guess it probably leads to a question about at what point in your opinion, did food become chemistry, if you believe this to be
Mm.
true, rather than nourishment?
Yeah. I think, so yeah, one thing we haven't touched on yet is the food pyramid as well. So,
Oh, yeah, good point. We
um,
haven't. Yeah.
but before I sort of mention the food pyramid, I think sort of 1980s was really when the kind of packaged convenience foods, microwavable foods, really kind of came to the fore. And when you look at the rates of chronic disease and obesity, there was a definite shift in that period. So I'm not saying that was the only factor, but when you put the two things side by side, there's some correlation there.
100%.
So I think, yeah, 1980s is when it really started to kind of shift and turn, and but probably they were still possibly still sometimes foods back then, and I think just slowly everything just gets that bit more packaged, that bit more processed, that bit more convenient, because we're just looking for quick fixes and easy this and easy that, and I think, yeah, the food quality and the nutritional value of food is declining as well. So
Mhm.
it's a number of factors, but they're all contributing to, like you said, overfed and undernourished children and people. Yeah.
And I guess when you have high calorie but low density, you like I've done it. I'll sit there and I'm not perfect either, mind you. I know I probably like to think I am, but I'm far from it. But you tend to hoe into a convenience food. I do once a month, maybe whatever it might be, packet of chips. Even then, I'm so particular about the oil.
Mm.
Potato oil, salt. But even then, it can't be a processed seed oil, right? It's got to be something very different. But why is it then you could have a high calorific meal and then you're hungry an hour later?
Yeah. Because I think your body's not satiated. Your body's still craving nourishment, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And so I think fundamentally our bodies know what they need.
Yeah.
And if they're just not getting that in the food, there's this sort of craving for more and more of something to kind of fill it, but it's just not going to be found in empty calories. So, um, yeah.
Well, you're up against it. You said marketing. I mean, the machines are
Mm,
massive. We know that. And big food, big ag, big, big marketing. Oh, and of course, you rightly said it, Fiona. It's just not one thing. And if people look at the ingredients in a label, they go, well, it's just that. But when you do that by 7 times a day, by 7 days a week,
mm,
by 30 days a month, and then you've got, the water problems we have, the air problems, off gassing, no wonder we are progressively becoming a very sick. But the other thing I want to point out here is we're seeing dementia now overtake heart
mm,
disease. So,
mm,
and that is, and if you go through the research, and I've done a lot of a lot of research on dementia, you will find a lot of it is stemming from the undernutrition, if you will, or the value, the density of rich foods we're not consuming, and
mm,
actually caused by the highly processed chem. So, how do you then look at the machine, the marketing machine, and knowing they'll target wellness products because the TGA make it almost impossible for a wellness product. But
mm.
how do you avoid becoming part of that, wellness machine culture? And just
Yeah.
yours.
Look, for
And
me,
sorry, that was a long question.
yeah, yeah. For me personally, like I have just had a bit of a lifelong interest and passion for, food and health.
Yeah.
Um, but and I have tried, a bit of raw food and a bit of vegan, a bit of, paleo. But I tend not to be a sort of a faddy kind of person where I kind of want to. I'm not. Don't necessarily just jump on the latest and greatest and see how I go with it.
Mm,
It's got to resonate with me at some level, and yeah, and I think it's just the things that I have felt drawn to trying. It's just actually getting that feedback of actually how is this making me feel? How is what are the changes that I'm seeing in myself? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it and just kind of actually get using my own feedback as to does this work? Does this not?
mm,
And similarly with my kids and the kind of process that I've been on with kind of trying to feed them, really good nutritious food and, see them as they grow and as they're fueled and making adjustments as we go just for what suits each of them and what their bodies need. So, um, it is another i- portion of headspace to take up, I guess, in our busy,
and a lot,
our
certainly
busy
a lot.
lives. But that's, I guess, part of that thing of just empowering the kids to kind of start to tune into that for themselves. And one of my daughters has a few food sensitivities, and so that's probably been another factor in kind of why I've developed what I've developed and how we've gone about it is, and why I'm a bit of a label checker is because there are things that will trigger her into migraines and things like that. And so, um, and it's not always been easy for her because there's a whole lot of things that she's like, well, if I have everyone else is eating that, but if I have it, I know I might get a migraine, and so that feels a bit unfair. But, at the flip side, we've also talked about what a gift it is to just know to be so attuned to your body about what makes it feel good, what doesn't, and how that is going to serve her for the rest of her life to kind of know that at the ripe young age of 10 of like what works for my body and what doesn't, and to kind of take that into the rest of her life. So
Lovely.
I don't
Yeah.
even know if that answered your question,
Yeah,
Jason. My God,
that's
bit of
beautiful.
a tangent.
I
Mm,
think the fact you give real life examples really connects with people.
mm,
And something I admire with Adam and yourself with parents with questions, because this is, and I'll again relate it to politics. I spend a lot of my time in politics. Obviously, as you can tell,
yeah.
I do care about this nation. But what I read today, or what I heard today was uh, oh, Claire O'Neill. I don't know what ministry. Could be housing minister. I can't remember. I think she is, and she was talking to Nat Barr on Channel 7. I don't watch mainstream, but it was on Instagram. And Nat Barr was literally talking to 50 people that were saying, no, no, your budget is killing us. Your budget is killing us. And what Claire O'Neill was doing was saying, well, hang on, no, well, that's not true. We use the Grattan Institute for our modelling, and they're a global blah, blah, blah. Of course, Grattan Institute have got about 100 things wrong, and the government's own modelling gets 100 things wrong. So
Hmm.
do you think when it comes to health and wellness that parents now, because they can see this happening to their kids
Mm,
right in front of their eyes, right? Do you
yeah.
think they're starting to lose trust in now the mainstream health advice as well?
Look, I think that's a definite possibility of just people sort of thinking twice about like clearly the system isn't working when you do
Right.
look at you look around and see like the rates of chronic disease and obesity in children. So clearly, what we've been told um, and what we've been sold isn't
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
And so yeah, interestingly, I guess it comes back to, well, one of the factors is the food pyramid, which, I went to school and was taught all about the pyramid, where you've got, 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrates a day, and less up to like fats in small amounts, and a little bit of protein, but mostly your grains, and then a bit of fruit and veg, and all the things. And so beginning of this year, the US Department of, can't remember which department it was, health, but
Yeah.
they've released a new food pyramid, which almost just flips it upside down. So what this new food pyramid is telling us is, really, like, up the top where you've got the most is the proteins, the healthy fats, and then followed by vegetables, followed by fruits, and then the grains is a little peak at the bottom of
Mm.
the pyramid. And so it's like, well, do I trust this? Does it, like, the last pyramid didn't work. What's so good about this one? Um, so I think, the fact that the last pyramid didn't work and this one looks drastically different, is one way of looking at it. But I guess also just looking back at how our grandparents and our
Mm.
grandparents ate, meat and 3 veg, and eggs for breakfast, and whatever. And they were getting, much higher, well, nutrient density. We've talked about that, and
Yeah.
that's was lacking a bit more in our food. But they were eating a lot more proteins and a lot more healthy fats, and packaged food. Highly processed packaged food just didn't exist back then. And so, and the rates, yes, the rates of chronic, disease were much lower. So, I think we can sort of definitely glean some knowledge and some wisdom from, what worked back then, and apply it now. I think fundamentally to all of it, I don't think that us as humans were put on this earth to eat food out of packets.
Yes. Well said. Yeah, that's probably the point. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one.
And I think, the other part of what is missing is our connection with the food that we're eating.
Yeah.
And I think that has more than just nutritional benefits.
Well, and I think about breakfast, and I'm not suggesting kids fast. And my mate and I and our wives ran juicing retreats where people would literally just drink
Yep.
cold pressed juice, right? And for 5, 6 days, 7 days, whatever. I've done a water fast for 10 days, nothing but water,
Mm,
and I wouldn't suggest it. But what I did learn with for kids, you wouldn't do it, right? But what I did learn through the whole history of through fasting was that it was actually Dr. Kellogg's, and we all know Kellogg's the
mm.
name, was the one that introduced break the fast, and with that came, dare I say, he might have been well intentioned, but his execution was poor because we just got belted with sugary cereals, which became the norm for a go back to the Cocoa Pops, just like a chocolate milkshake and a crunchy.
Mm.
Stuck with me. The marketing works, right?
You've still got it in your head, yeah.
Can't remember Kellogg cornflakes, but a part of part of
Mm.
your child's everyday. It really is a narrative flip. So you don't want to see a kid fast. Actually, that's a question. Would you want to see a kid fast? Do you ever think? Is that something you'd
Um,
entertain?
Look, I think, again, I guess I have a lot of trust in the body's innate wisdom if you're willing to listen to it. And so, when you're sick, when kids are sick, and they're not hungry, and they don't want to eat, and their body needs, doesn't have the energy to use towards digestion because it's using it towards healing. So I think there's definite times when the body needs to fast, and even children's bodies will fast when they're, trying to fight some infection, or some virus or
Mm,
whatever, and that's normal. That's what their bodies need. But I personally haven't done any research into fasting for kids, or
no, nor I.
benefits would be or wouldn't be around that. I just haven't felt that that's something that I particularly need to explore. But I think it's just, if we're just going to bring it back to really simple terms, it's like, well, whatever they're putting in their mouths, if they've got a balance of protein, good fats, and good and healthy carbohydrates,
Mm.
then you can't go too wrong, right? Like, if you're going to have a bit of it, all of those, and whatever you put in your mouth, that's, you're most of the way there. So,
Yeah, no,
um,
true. And
yeah,
this is not medical advice, folks. Diet
mm,
advice is just
yeah,
information only. We're just sort of chewing the fat here, and based on one mum's experience, which I love. And that's the story that I love about yours, Fiona. It's very real, and you've
mm,
done it with your kids. Like, it's not like you've had to read something and go and implement it. You've actually
mm,
gone through this pathway of
mm,
getting something so nutritious And so fantastic that your kids have gone, yeah, well, tick cross mum, cross mum. Now you've
Mm.
got, the three green ticks, I guess, and that's a great thing. With not, I guess, it is a great thing. So when you look at a kid, when you, can you look at a kid and say, geez, I think your nutrition needs, a little bit of attention in a certain space based on how they're feeling, their cognitive function, anything like that? Is that, I know
Mm.
you're not a naturopath, but
Yeah, look, I'm not fully qualified in any of this, and so there'd be other people that are can would be able to look at a child and go they're deficient in this or whatever. And I guess my experience is just really based around my connection with my children and what
yeah,
I know, who I know them to be, and how they behave, and what they need. And I guess part of that is intuition, and part of that's just kind of the research that I've done for them. But one thing I will say is one thing that's quite obvious with me, and which is unfortunate. Is like my girls all play sport and they love their sport, and they're full of beans and they get right in there. And
are they
so when
netballers?
I sorry.
Are they netballers? What are they playing?
Netballers, footy, like AFL.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
so they're the 2 main sports in our household.
Okay, beautiful.
But, and I played netball as a girl too, and I remember, like, halftime, oranges, and everyone would
Right,
just have an orange and suck on an orange, and they'd get you through. Um, and what came as quite a shock to me is, you don't see an orange at halftime anymore, it's a packet of lollies, and whoever's, you kind of like, "Here, have a lolly, get you through the second half." And you see the kids, grab a handful and shove them down, whatever, on the court, and there might be kind of, they're energized, but they're not focused. They're
yeah.
kind of running around in circles and kind of whatever. And then you can see them on the court, and you see they crash, and then they're just kind of a bit dazed and a bit kind of, and kind of dragging their feet off the court at the end of the quarter, or yeah, and so that's where I kind of see it the most, is that kind of so clearly that's not working. So why are we still doing this? Like,
I agree with you.
and just keeping that as a sometimes food rather than a kind of expectation that at half, I'm going to play half a game and then I get a lolly, a handful of lollies, and then there's little shifts like that that I think, yeah, where I see it unfolding before my eyes, and I'm like, well,
That's an obvious.
why is this normal?
Yeah, we should
Yeah.
normalise it. I'll give you a little story there. And then I'll ask you one more and we can wrap. But I was chatting with a mate of mine who coached an under 12s touch footy team.
Mm,
So, and touch footy, it's high intensity.
yeah.
You're literally, running back, going forward, running back, whatever. So rugby league touch footy. And he was saying that, so Gatorade was the go-to drink at half time.
Mm, yeah.
And he flipped it out and he now put in coconut water.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
so the performance lifted by 15, but like the
Mm,
endurance of the kids almost was overnight. And he
yeah.
was so shocked because I said to him, "Do you think Gatorade's a great thing or whatever?" Well, I don't want a bad Gatorade, but it was
Mm.
one of those sports drinks. And he's like, "Well, it's what the athletes all use." I'm going, maybe they just hold the bottle, but I don't know whether they're
Yeah.
actually drinking it, and
Yeah.
now we see it with cricketers with pickle juice, like, no longer are they throwing down Gatorade, they're
Mm,
throwing pickle juice down for their cramping and whatever else, and I think that is a really good indication that people are starting to parents
mm,
with questions, right? Think and ask better questions for themselves, so
yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. Um,
Mm,
what does a genuinely healthy child look and feel like to you? You're a mum of 3,
yeah.
I reckon you know the answer to this question.
Yeah. So, they jump out of bed in the morning. They've got enough kind of, they're embodied enough in themselves to kind of get themselves organized, and have some breakfast, have a great healthy lunch packed. They're largely happy to go to school and see their friends, and come home in the afternoon feeling like they've had a good day, and they're not crashing out, that they've then got enough energy to kind of go to sport and do their thing, and then winding down after a healthy dinner, and going to sleep, and like, yeah, at a good hour, and then having a good night's sleep, and they're just stronger, like strong enough immunity. Like, it's not that we never get sick in our family, but compared to a lot of other families where the kids have always, it's one thing after another, and it's just kind of this constant, like, oh, so and so's sick and they've got a sore throat and they snotty nose, and not saying that we never do that, but I think the instances of that in our family is a lot less than others. And yeah, they're just, I think they're able to focus when they need to focus. They're kind of balanced mood as well. They're not kind of up and down and all over the shop. They're not, yeah, and because of the lack of sugar crashes, they're sort of in their bodies and they're kind of experiencing things in real time. They're not kind of zapping around in their heads from any sort of sugar highs, and um, they're just kind of robust and happy kids. So, um,
Sounds like they're tuned in.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
and know when to turn off, obviously, because I don't have kids, but
mm,
I can only imagine that you've got to have boundaries there as well, not just with going to bed at a certain time, but also screen time and all the rest of it that goes with it. I
that's
want to
right.
close with this, if I may. I was going to ask you something about how society feeds their children, but I reckon we've covered that. But
Mm,
when I think about, so I'll just give you my lens of coaching adults, right? So I've done it for about 18 years now. 18 years? Gosh, no, 16 years.
mm,
And for me, there's a saying about your morbidity years are your last 10 years of your life, and
mhm.
99% of the people don't know when that is, right? So you don't know your last 10 years unless unless something happens unforgiving. But what I do know on my research is those morbidity years are also some of the worst years of our lives because we're so struck down with chronic disease. So I
Mm.
guess my question to you, Fiona, being a mum, a health nut, living in a nice climate where you are, what kind of adults do healthy children become?
Well, my hope is that when the fundamentals are in place from a young age, where they know that good food makes them feel good, they know that their body and their brain functions well on good food. Um, when they have been empowered to make good choices for themselves, then I truly hope that that is what they take with them for the rest of their lives. And they'll have their times when they overdo it and whatever. But if it's fundamental to who they are and what they know of themselves, I'd like to think that's something they take through for the rest of their lives. And surely these things kind of lead to a much healthier and happier and better quality of life as they get
Mm,
older. And I guess we have been very, very focused on nutrition here, and because that's my passion. But clearly, there's exercise and movement is so important. Is one of the other pillars, and community, and like feeling part of things, feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling supported, and having good people around them. That's another key thing to overall health and well-being in life. So, um,
And the flow on effect there, I guess, is we have better leaders for our country tomorrow.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's a pivotal thing and something which, in my experience, in my opinion, is sadly lacking right now. So you get people that are a bit more passionate about life and the country they live in, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not saying the current political class aren't, but it's that area, and you don't need to be in politics to be a leader in life.
That's
It's
right.
leading every time, and that's the part I love.
Mm,
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed our chat tonight. It's
me
for
too.
me, it's great going back to health and wellness.
Mm.
Again, just where can they email you? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah. So probably the first port of call is my website, which is www.rocketfuel. So ROCKIT fuel.com. And from there, you can contact me on email, and I'm very happy to send you a personal reply back. And also, you can go to the menu and check out the 3-step reset.
Oh,
All you
yes,
need to
that's
do
what I
is,
wanted to
yeah,
do. Thank you.
to jump in there. And yeah, there's some great resources there. You can try it on your kids at home. A few things to print out and put on your fridge so that they're sort of front of mind when you're thinking about what am I putting in the lunchbox, or writing your shopping list, and okay, well, maybe I won't buy that, but I'll buy this instead. So, yeah, help yourself. Print them out, see how you go. Just keep it really simple, just one little shift at a time, and because sometimes it is just that 1 degree can set you off on a totally different trajectory. So rather than trying to make it some big overwhelming thing that is going to drop off, in 2 weeks because it's all too hard, just like pick one thing and just make that little shift, and then and if that works, pick one more little thing and make one more little shift, and before you know it, you can really make a big impact on your kids' health and their well-being, and the health and well-being of yourself and your family. So,
Beautiful. Thank you. I will link those in. When we finish here, we are going live, but I'll also, when I download the vid, I'll link your website, which I'm looking at over here in front of me, and your email address as well. But thank you, Fiona. And I just want to call you out for all the work you did with Parents with Questions. A lot of Adam was obviously a front man with that, and John, well, probably not John so much, but Adam definitely was. But I do know the effort that you went through, and to help people through a very difficult time, a very confusing time. It's not lost on the people that know you, and we respect you and appreciate you for doing all that.
Oh, thank you, Jason, and yeah, thank you for just being such a great spokesperson for yeah, living life and doing it on your own terms,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
Value based. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to consider whether I do more of these, but this one I really wanted to do because of the kid aspect of it, and seeing some things that are going on in my life personally with my nephews and nieces. I really wanted to get a focus on this. And when I heard what Fiona was doing, and then saw her product, and I looked at the ingredients, which I'm looking at right here. It's why my eyes are going over here. I'm going, that is powerful stuff. That really, and people need to hear about it. And we need a hand. We need a hand because it's so tough just trying to live life day for day in Australia today. It might get better, but right now, any leg, any hand up rather than a hand out is going to help. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you tuning in. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.